Hello, and I welcome you to our very special coverage of worshiping during the pandemic. Over the last year and a half or so, we've been giving updates on what one particular religious organization is doing during this pandemic, how they're keeping their members safe, how they're keeping the public safe when it comes to their ministry. Well, we're going to get an update. We know things are opening up, and we've heard some announcements of them resuming and their in-person congregation meetings. So we asked them to come back on to give us an update of how that's going and what we have to look forward to. And also in Ukraine, and they even have members who lived in Ukraine, who had to flee Ukraine, and we're going to find out what type of humanitarian efforts that they're doing to help those out in that part of the world. So without any further delay, let's welcome our very, very special guest. I am so delighted to welcome back the U.S. spokesperson for Jehovah's Witnesses, the United States branch. We're talking about Robert Hendricks. Robert, welcome back, my friend. How are you?
Thank you, Paul. It's good to be back. Doing very well. We really are, and we're excited about the news that we have to talk about today.
Yeah, and talking about exciting news, in-person meetings. So I'm looking so forward to talk about that and kicking off with the memorial of Jesus' death. Really, really exciting times. And Robert, before we talked about that, there's something in particular we wanted to get an update on. We know that Jehovah's Witnesses is a worldwide organization, members that are all part of the globe, Russia, and even in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And with the conflict going on in Ukraine, how are the witnesses faring up?
Well, like anything else, this is a crisis that affects our brothers and sisters. We have 130,000 Jehovah's Witnesses in Ukraine, and they have been significantly affected by this war. We've already have a dramatic effect with our Russian brothers who have been banned. Our worship services, our Bibles have been banned in Russia for a number of years now. Our friends have been cruelly treated, and now with Ukraine, it is extending the reach, and it is. I think there's two things that are going on. One is the fear for your life, but also is the fear for our worship. So some of our brothers have chosen to leave. You can understand why. The millions have left Ukraine because of the devastation that's happening among residential areas in the country. And we have set up 27 humanitarian relief committees in Ukraine as an organization. But there also have been other relief committees, like in Poland and other countries where the refugees are coming. Some of our brothers are coming, and so they're cared for. Right now, as of last week anyway, because we had a meeting with the Poland Disaster Relief Committee, we call them Disaster Relief Committees, Humanitarian Relief Committees. We had a meeting with them, and they said right now about 350 a day are coming and cared for. So they're being brought into areas where they can be cared for immediately, both spiritually and physically, stabilized. And then they are being sent to places around Ukraine, mostly private homes where Jehovah's Witnesses have elected to take them in. We have thousands of locations where our brothers and sisters are being housed right now, and it's all being done through this humanitarian relief committees that have been set up in Ukraine and in Poland. Additionally, worldwide, in Europe and in the Americas, we have been identifying resources as branches that can be provided to our brothers and sisters in Ukraine, whether they become refugees, whether they hit the borders of the United States or Central America or another country in Europe, so that immediately they can take advantage of the resources that have been made available by the governments. Those resources are a lot. In fact, just over the weekend, we have identified 100 resources just in this country alone that our brothers from Ukraine, if they do come to the United States, can take advantage of. And also resources they can take advantage of right now. In fact, And there was one resource that we found immediately. We got to them. 100,000 plane flights are being provided for free by a Hungarian airline to take Ukrainian refugees anywhere around the world. And that would be a free flight for their family. So we've identified resources like that. And what we've also done, we met also last week with the Central America Branch Committee, the Disaster Relief Committee, some of whom are on the branch committee there. And we're coordinating our resources here in the United States and Central America because we're identifying Ukrainian brothers and sisters who may be coming through Mexico, or Russian brothers and sisters who are doing the same. We have set up a humanitarian relief committee just for the Ukrainian and Russian refugees here in the United States so that when they do come in, we can care for them in every way possible. And that's been quite an endeavor worldwide. The great thing about being a global brotherhood is that when one part of us hurts, the other part of us does too. And so we're looking to provide resources and help in any way possible, more than just spiritual, but that's primarily so, but also physical.
And Robert, for some who may be listening to our conversation for the first time, that we've had multiple over the last year and a half or so, they may not understand religious persecution and the Russian government and why are the ones in Ukraine are maybe under some type of religious persecution if this invasion went to the point where Russia was to take over that country. And can you maybe explain to ones who may not be familiar with the persecution that the witnesses have faced in Russia and why many are fleeing because of religious persecution?
Yeah, on the whole, the term many probably is an overstatement, but some have chosen to leave the persecution because it has been devastating. Hundreds of our brothers have been arrested just for reading the Bible. Many older sisters, older ones in their 60s, 70s, have been arrested and put in jail, incarcerated for reading a Bible or for getting together with other worshipers and having peaceful services, just praising God, reading the Bible together, discussing biblical accounts. And our Bible has been banned in Russia. Why this has happened, we don't know. We do know that it has significantly affected our brothers and sisters. And so there's a double crisis for our dear brothers in Russia. Not only can they not worship freely, but they're also dealing with the deprivation of many of the embargoes that have been put on Russia right now. So all Russians are suffering, many of them anyway. Our brothers now are suffering in a double way, a disaster on top of a disaster. So when Russia actually annexed Crimea, some of the same totalitarian rules related to religious persecution began to take root there as well. And so there is a fear and there is a sense that if Russia does take over Ukraine in a significant way, that could lead to further religious persecution of our brothers in Ukraine. So not only are they losing their homes, not only are they losing their homeland, but also losing their ability to worship freely. And so the specter of that must be affecting our brothers and sisters. But all the reports we have heard is that they are being strong, they are being cared for, they are together. And they are gaining peace by being still in community in some way. So we're praying for them every day, and we're providing the practical resources that we can right now in order to help them get through this crisis.
And Robert, I remember recently on the website 2jw.org that there was an article that discussed the significance of what's going on, especially with Ukraine and other world conditions. And it seems like the organization is doing a really good job of keeping the public abreast of these things and how it has a biblical kind of, I want to say, prophecy towards that. Is that the correct term to use, Robert?
Well, what we've done with our website, you're absolutely right, is we, about a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years ago now, right after the pandemic began, we had already begun pivoting our website to be more topical. And so, whereas in the past it took us months in order to write a story, vet a story, get the story approved, get the story translated and up on jw.org, which is, of course, the most translated website on the web by far, 1,054 languages at last look and growing. It was quite an endeavor to get that material onto a website and in those various languages. Well, they've reduced that dramatically, that time. So what that has allowed us to do throughout the course of the pandemic is it has allowed us to deal with very topical issues. So we've dealt with pandemic fatigue as an example. We've dealt with the issue of vaccines as an example. And immediately when these things become issues, we're able to highlight it on our homepage. The same has been true when the Ukraine war broke out. Immediately what we talked about on our website was simply this. Is there biblical precedent and prophecy that would explain what we're going through, give a biblical context, a prophetic context? And the fact is that there is. We certainly don't revel in the fact that things are bad right now. We're just as much in pain as anybody else. But I guess if you were to look at the light at the end of this tunnel, it would be that better things are ahead. And that's really our whole mantra. It's the way we live our life, keeping hope alive by not just simply looking at the dark days that we're dealing with now, but looking at them in the context of prophecy in the Bible and recognizing that the better days are ahead, and that's a real hope, not just something that we've made up. And it's important for us to look at, because so many people, let's face it, Paul, when you go through what we're going through right now, whether it's a pandemic, war, religious persecution, you start wondering, why? Why? And the Bible answers why. And so we want to help people to understand the why. But, if you got 10 people in a room and you asked them that question, they'd have 10 different answers. The Bible has one, and it's very powerful, and it gives us faith to go on and to meet the challenges of the future.
And Robert, one thing I appreciate about Jehovah's Witnesses and how they not only inform the public, but even take care of members of their congregations as well. They sometimes, too, when it comes to things going on, may ask why. And it's nice to get the reminders of why, especially in the times in which we are living in. And Robert, thank you so much for catching us up on Ukraine and on Russia and humanitarian efforts, and how that humanitarian efforts is even extending here in the United States and other parts of the globe, really coming together as an organization to take care of ones. We really, really appreciate it. Anything else you want to say about the humanitarian effort before we move on to some other big news we got a few weeks ago?
Well, I think this is a time in crises like this, during the pandemic, during war, where it's easy to talk about love, but walking it's much more difficult. But right now is where you see our organization, our brotherhood, really walking love, really living love. And it's an amazing thing. It's comforting to be able to be a part of it, but to also see it and to feel comfortable that if indeed something happens to us, which no doubt it will, that others will come to our aid as well. And so that's the way it was in the first century. That's what Paul wrote to our brothers in Corinth in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. And that's what we're seeing today. When one part of the body hurts, the rest hurt with it, and we grieve for our brothers, but we also want to do something for them, and that's what we're trying to do right now. And it's a wonderful thing to see. It's faith strengthening.
It truly is, Robert, and I know you appreciate music the way I do, and kind of reminds me of an old song. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. And it's great to see that Jehovah's Witnesses are sharing that love, not only with members of the organization, but also others as well.
Who is that? That's not the Fifth Dimension, is it?
I'm trying to remember. I need to Google that.
Okay.
You know what, Robert? Some exciting news came out a few weeks back. I have the JW Library app on my phone, and I go on it every day, and I looked at an update, and it talked about resuming in-person meetings, and not just the pilot program that we talked about before, but worldwide. So, Robert,
Mm-hmm.
that's some exciting news out there. So, share with us, how did the organization come to that decision to do it and do it worldwide?
It was a surprise to us as well. We were sitting at our lunch, and probably you know this, Paul, here in our headquarters. We sit together with a lot of people. And so this was a special lunch because it was designated as a special day. And at our lunch table, we got this announcement right before prayer that the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses had decided that we would go with in-person meetings, begin in-person meetings starting April 1 in all places in the world that didn't have government restrictions. And so we would make that attempt locally. Of course, there's 13,000 congregations in the United States branch territory alone, so that's a lot. And we know that some of them will have varying success in making that deadline. But all of us are trying, and I tell you, it is. There has been a collective shout of joy, I would say, mixed with some level of anxiety. We're very obedient people, and we've been very protected over 2 years. We look back on 2 years, Paul, and we can say, probably the only global religious organization that can actually say, in 2 years, not one person has contracted COVID at one of our meeting places.
Yeah.
And not one person has contracted COVID as part of our public ministry, because they have all been suspended, and we have had virtual meetings, very successful. We can talk about that. We've had virtual conventions. We've talked about that before. So we've provided spiritual resources during this time. And so all of us have not been satisfied with it, not necessarily and simply complacent, but all of us have been thankful for it. And we haven't looked back. We haven't pined away, because when you look back, you start thinking, oh, I wish we were, then you start not accepting what you have. And what we had was very powerful. We had, twice weekly, never missed a meetings with our brothers and sisters where we can talk to them just like this, where we could see them, where we could have Bible discussions with them on 4 different meetings on 2 different days a week. And this has been very consistent, and we've gotten used to it. It's been comfortable in many ways. But of course, we miss our brothers. We feel like the Apostle Paul in Romans chapter 1. He wrote a letter to the Romans. You may be familiar with it. It's Romans chapter 1, 11 and 12, where he said, because he was planning to go see them, I am longing to see you, he said, because he wanted to impart a gift to them. But he also said, so there should be an interchange of encouragement. And so as strong as we are right now, and as much as we have prospered in this very difficult period, I think this is going to take us to a new level. And we're going to look back on the days when it was 100% Zoom, and we're going to say, how did we go 2 years without hugging each other? How did we go 2 years without being here together? But right now, we look forward to the next few weeks and what it will bring, because we have some special dates ahead in April as well, which the timeliness of this couldn't be better.
So true. So true. So, Robert, are the virtual Zoom meetings going to go away once everyone goes back to in-person meetings?
Well, I think last time we talked about pilot meetings that we were holding in Puerto Rico, and we ultimately held them in Connecticut. We almost held them twice in California, but because of the abundance of caution, we didn't. We canceled them both times because we saw rates going up. It was right on the verge where there was that brief period in Northern California where we had very low rates of infection and very high rates of vaccination in a couple of counties. So we were going to pilot them there, and we started it. We canceled it the day before on one week, and then a couple of weeks later we canceled it about, I think, that same week. But we did have them in Connecticut for a number of weeks, I think 3 or 4, and in Puerto Rico 2 or 3 months. I think it was about 2 months of meetings there. And we were able to find out how to run a hybrid meeting. I mean, that was really the purpose of it. How would folks react with singing with a mask on, coming with a mask on? How would they feel? Would they feel comfortable? How would they do when meetings are happening both online or by video conference and live? How would we choose somebody because our meetings are discussion based? How would we make them feel part of the meeting? All of that, I think we worked out a lot of that over the course of those many meetings. I think we had 10 different congregations in Puerto Rico, several in Connecticut. And so collectively, we gained that knowledge. And as we move forward after April 1, at least for the time being, and we kind of think maybe for much longer than that, we will be having both meetings in person and also on Zoom. So these hybrid meetings we're equipping all of our Kingdom halls now. Many have already done that. We're sanitizing all of our halls and getting them ready for recommencing meetings. And we feel like it's going to start a whole new era globally where we're embracing many more in different ways and are able to now really make sure that our meetings never miss a beat. Because if we can't go because of snow now, or if there's another natural disaster, or if there's another pandemic, we'll be ready because we'll have this experience, and I think it makes us a better and more resilient organization and people.
Robert, that's a very, very good point. As far as snow, different natural disasters. I'm sorry, and other elements that could prevent ones from actually getting to a Kingdom Hall personally and physically. And it seems like the organization is very progressive and looking forward to make sure that spiritual food is always available for ones to receive it.
We've always, ever since I was a kid, we had a call-in, right? So there's always been a tie-in line for decades. And then we also had an app that allowed people to tie in by just pressing a button. And it was really high-quality audio. But for the most part in our congregations, we didn't have two-way communication. For the most part in our congregations, almost nowhere did we have a two-way visual communication. So I think over the years, what we found is that our tie lines were maxing out because they were more elderly, more disabled, more who wanted to stay home because they were sick, but they still didn't want to miss the meeting. And they were anonymous to us, right? They were only a name on a sheet because, we see that Sister Smith called in today. But we didn't see her. We didn't hear her. And so as we come out of this, we're going to be able to see and hear Sister Smith. We're going to be able to still engage with those who may be just a little under the weather but want to attend the meeting anyway virtually. We'll still be able to engage with those who may feel like their accessibility because of having some kind of disability is an issue. Some are simply allergic to perfume or other environments or carpet. There's so many things that now our brothers and sisters, they don't have to feel guilty. We see them, we hear them, they get the encouragement of the meeting while we still have the in-person session. And I think that in a way, it's the best of both worlds.
Absolutely. And Robert, what about mask wearing for the time being? What's the recommendation? Maybe ones are watching and listening and like, you know what? I've heard Robert and Paul have these talks, and I've been to the virtual meeting, but I want to go check out and see how it is in person. What about mask wearing? Well,
masks are recommended, and we'll have that announcement at the beginning of the meeting. So we recommend that you bring your mask. Because if Puerto Rico and Connecticut are any gauge, where they were also recommended, there was 100% participation. So you're probably not going to want to be the only one in the congregation without a mask on. But that's your choice. We're leaving it up to the individual, but we are recommending masks. Of course, we're not mandating vaccination. So we're hoping that for all those who make the choice to come, that they're making a choice with two things in mind: their own health and life, and mitigating any risk that there still may be because the pandemic's not over, and also making a good choice for their neighbor, those that they will sit next to, those that they will hug. And we recognize that our brothers and sisters, our congregants, they want what's best for each other. That's why we've been so united in this time. And so we know this is going to work out well. And we know they'll make a good personal choice when it comes to mask wearing and whether to come to the live meeting or not.
And Robert, let's say that, like the state where I live in California, what if Governor Newsom says, well, if 50 people or more, masks are required.
Yeah.
Now, are we required to follow the government then, or if you can give us some guidance on that, please?
Well, that's an interesting comment because remember what I said before, we're going to conform to government regulations. So where the government says we can't meet, we won't meet. Where the government says we need to mask up, we mask up. Where the government says that all those who need to attend, if a government does say that, need to be vaccinated, will be vaccinated. You see, we recognize that in these cases, the authorities, the governments, have the right to ask us to do that. We don't fight that. We're not fighting for our personal freedoms here. We just want to worship. And yes, we can worship at home. And so if that's the choice, we will. We only defy governments, if you want to put it that way, or challenge them, it's probably a better word, when they tell us to do something, they mandate something that God has told us not to do, or they tell us not to do something like preach, and God has told us to preach. So we take our responsibility toward God first, which is why we don't pledge allegiance to a country. We only pledge allegiance to our supreme being, our God, Jehovah. And when he tells us to do something, we do it. But in these cases, our Creator wants us to be safe and has set forth in Romans chapter 13, the first 5 verses there, and many know these verses, that we need to be obedient to what it calls the superior authorities. And that the authority is placed in their relative position, meaning that their relative oversight of us in their relative positions by God. He's allowed them to exist, to provide order and services for us. And as Christians, we're going to be obedient to the governments when it comes to these matters. And so that's a long answer to if the government says mask up, we mask up.
All right. Sounds good, Robert. Thank you so much for clarifying that and giving us the organization's stand on what to do in that type of situation right there. So, Robert, let's talk about looking back over the last couple of years with the virtual meetings, with the virtual regional conventions, and just the virtual ministry as well. What has been the feedback from the organization? But not only that, we kind of shared this before in different interviews that we have. I understand, too, that there were even some who started to become one of Jehovah's Witnesses virtually and never has stepped foot in the Kingdom Hall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's been a very amazing journey. I think last time we talked about how when we first went into the virtual meetings, the suspension of our ministry, the virtual conventions, there was definitely a feeling of, well, how is this going to work? But, it's amazing to look back and realize that we had been preparing for this for decades. And what I mean by that is, number one, since the 30s, we've been talking about letter writing and phone calling because we've always had those who have a hard time getting out to our ministry, going on the street, walking from door to door. Yourself, Paul, many people just can't do that physically. And so we've always recommended that for certainly for those who can't get out in their ministry physically. But we've also always said, especially in the last several decades, that it may actually be the better way to reach some people. Mm-hmm. And so what we have found over the last 2 years is that we have been very effective and efficient in covering big communities with tens of millions of letters. Here's a couple of statistics for you, just to give you an understanding of how successful it's been. Around the world over the last 2 years during the pandemic, we've had about 400,000 people baptized as Jehovah's Witnesses. That's incredible. Here in the United States, just in the last year, from actually September 2020 to September 2021, we had 20,000, nearly 20,000 baptized. We had 30,000 who returned to the faith, who were inactive Jehovah's Witnesses. We've had many who started studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, attending meetings virtually during that period of time, never have knocked on a door, never have gone to a live convention, never have seen the inside of a Kingdom Hall. And each week, on average, from March of 2020 to November 2021, each week, on average, we've had more than 1.5 million people attend each meeting.
Wow.
Now, that's a pretty massive number when you consider there's just under 1.3 million Jehovah's Witnesses in the United States. That's nearly 300,000 people that are tuning in to our meetings right now who are not baptized Jehovah's Witnesses. It's just, I think we've seen great production. One other figure for you. From March 2020 to November 2021, just in the United States, we have spent more than 400 million hours in our ministry, writing letters, virtual Bible studies through video conferencing, and also our phone witnessing. So we've been busy, and I think I've mentioned this before. I'll mention it again, though. During that period of time, we've held 2 conventions in 500 languages online for the world, the global community, 500 languages, more than 100 sign languages. During that time, in those 2 years, 2020, 2021, we've released 77 new language translations of the Bible. So we have been moving on as an organization. The pandemic has not stopped us. Instead, it's made us stronger and more resolved. And when I said this, we have been preparing for this for decades. It isn't just our mode of ministry. We also were technically ready, right? So our JW Library app, which you can put on any phone or device, is on 15 million discrete devices around the world on any given day. We have 600,000 publications that are embedded, that are available through our JW Library, more than 200,000 audio and video publications. Just amazing that you can actually have that here. And I can say, okay, I want to text Paul Lane, here's a watchtower, or here's an article, or here's a video. It's yours. So we used to be the largest printers in the world. We may still be. Our Wake and Watchtower magazine, have a distribution in the 60, 70, 80 million range. But today, we're on the absolute cutting edge of technology, of able to deliver Bible truth in more than 1,000 languages with just a text, an email. And it's just pretty overwhelming to think that all of these years we have been planning to go virtual, and we didn't know it.
And Robert, it's kind of funny. I talked to ones who are Jehovah's Witnesses, and one of the things they used to say when they started studying the Bible was, "I'm not going to knock on the doors." So, Robert, they say now, "I'm not going to make any phone calls."
That's right.
But then they get the courage and they started making these phone calls, and
That's right.
Everything is all right. So it's good to see that the organization hasn't stopped. This pandemic has not stopped the organization at all. It's really been an increase. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. We've seen a beautiful increase worldwide and also in the United States.
Wow, beautiful, Robert. And one of the highlights of the in-person meetings that are going to come back, that is the memorial of Jesus' death, and also the special talk. You and I talked about that last year, and it was virtual, but now in many parts where there's no governmental restrictions, it's going to be in person now. So let's talk about why that's such an important date, not only for Jehovah's Witnesses, but for mankind in general.
It is, and it is good that we're doing it in person. We were just a few weeks from our memorial, our commemoration of Jesus Christ's death, which we do once a year. This year will be on April 15th. We were just a few weeks away from that when the pandemic hit. And so I think a lot of us thought, how are we going to pull this off? And we did. We had nearly 20 million attend that year. But last year, virtually, we had nearly 22 million will globally attend. And this year, I think it would seem to me, and I don't know this for a fact, but it would seem that the timing of our decision, while it certainly relates to the precipitous fall of the variant, which is now down to, I think the latest numbers, 29,000, was up to 1 million a day. We're down to about 29,000 a day. And I think it's continuing to fall. While that was really the predominant factor, that risk has been mitigated also through vaccines, through therapeutics now. Don't forget, you can actually get therapeutics even if you're not vaccinated to lessen and mitigate the impact of the disease. We know how to wear masks. We know they're effective. We know which ones are effective, right? But I think a great impetus to getting this done by April 1 was the memorial and special talk. And this year, the theme of the special talk is especially beautiful and right. And it's a question. Where can you find real hope? Where can you find real hope? And it talks about how we live right now in a society that has lost hope. And it actually goes into the why. Why has God allowed it? So that's just a few minutes of the talk. But then what the Bible promises and why we can count on the Bible. That's what the talk is about. And wow, it's just such a perfect 30-minute discussion, which includes a video, for the world. It's not a big investment, but I think there'll be a lot of takeaways for many, many people. We'll actually be holding that in most congregations on April 10th. I'll be giving it actually next Sunday in one congregation that had to move it, so I'll be giving it virtually first, and then I'll give it in person in 2 weeks. But what a beautiful theme to be able to invite folks to, and to be able to now to not only, I think there'll be hope in the very fact that we're back in the Kingdom Halls. I think there'll be hope just in being able to visit a Kingdom Hall for the first time in 2 years, or for some the first time ever, and be able to say, these people are practicing what they've been preaching for the last 2 years. That in itself, I think, will give people hope.
And Robert, will there be and I think I know the obvious answer to this, but I'm asking anyway. Is there going to be a virtual option for this too? Let's say if someone just can't make it, or is it a virtual option for these as well?
Yes. In most cases, there will be an in-person, but I think in all cases there will be an option for video conferencing. So you can go to the website jw.org, scroll down, find a meeting. And once you find your local meeting, you can actually make that phone call. Either somebody will answer or leave a message, and they'll get back to you. And if you'd like to attend, you can certainly do so, and you can do that virtually if you choose.
And Robert, I want to spend some time too about the ministry. We know that there's going to be in-person meetings. Is the ministry still virtual?
It is, but may I say, Paul, I just kind of neglected the fact, I thought you might talk about the memorial next. Is that okay?
Absolutely, let's do that. I am so sorry. Yes, let's talk about the memorial, Robert. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So we always have the special talk the week, now we do, the week before the memorial. So Sunday the 10th is the special talk, Where Can You Find Real Hope? Then that Friday, after sundown, all over the world, we will hold together globally on the same day, we will hold the memorial of Christ's death. And of course, that will be the memorial of his giving his life 1,989 years ago. On that very day, on Nisan 1433 CE, Jesus gave his life. So we'll come together for an in-person and hybrid meeting that will have a live speaker, and it'll be a wonderful blessing to be able to get together, because really, for Jehovah's Witnesses, Paul, this is our only holy day of the year. Not that other days aren't holy, that we don't set aside other days, but this is what some may call a holiday. We don't call it a holiday, but it's a special day for us. And the reason why we do that is really found in Luke chapter 22, where Jesus said, keep doing this, when he began that, what's called today by many the Last Supper, when he had that with his apostles, his 11 faithful apostles, he said, keep doing this celebration in commemoration, in remembrance of me. So that's what we do. That's why we call it the memorial, because he used the word remembrance. So we remember or memorialize his death on that day.
And Robert, who can attend the memorial? Is it just for Jehovah's Witnesses? Can other ones from different religions come to the memorial? Could my neighbor around the corner who doesn't believe in God, can he come to the memorial?
Belief in God is not a prerequisite. Now, hopefully when you walk away, you might believe in him, but to go there, it's not a prerequisite. And we're not looking to change your religion. We're looking to invite you into our community. And yes, it's a public meeting. In fact, to put any of your listeners at ease and viewers at ease, there are 8.6 million witnesses in the world, in about 120,000 congregations. About 22 million will visit us. So nearly 3 times as many people who are witnesses, actually non-witnesses, nearly 3 times the number of witnesses will be attending. So we welcome all, and we're looking forward to having all of you join us.
Awesome. Thank you, Robert. Thank you so much for reminding me. We got to talk about the memorial, because that's the most important thing we need to talk about. So thank you for reminding me about that. And Robert, let's talk about the preaching work. Is it still being done? Phone calls, letter writing, and if you can shed some light on that, please.
Sure. Yeah. So many wonder, are we going to go back to our in-person meetings, ministry? And the answer is, we hope so. We don't know what tomorrow brings with this pandemic. I think you know this, Paul. I think everybody who's listening knows this. This pandemic has surprised us at every turn. So to predict what we'll be doing in May, I can't. But what I can say is it's our full intention to get back into our in-person ministry, never leaving what we've learned behind, because I think that makes us better. But remember that with our meetings, our brothers and sisters, our congregants have a choice. They can stay home. We've given them that choice. It's going to be a personal choice whether to attend a meeting in person or virtually. And it'll be a choice for the guests if they want to come in person or virtually. But when we knock on doors, we're coming to somebody's door. We're not giving them a choice. Of course, we're giving them a choice not to listen, but we need to get them a message. And so right now, the best way to do that, and the safest way, is through letter writing and phone calls and video conferencing Bible studies. But no doubt in the future, we will resume some level of in-person ministry. It could be our cart witnessing, which is very prominent in places like Los Angeles and other cities around California. Or it could be our door knocking, or it could simply be starting with go back and return on people who know you, who have expressed interest in the past, make a pre-arrangement to go with them, because right now even those visits have been suspended. We call them return visits in Bible studies, personal Bible studies. Maybe we'll start with that. One of the things that we have found over the last 2 years is that just listening to the wise counsel of the organization has really benefited us. So individually, we may feel like, when, but we're not in a rush individually or as an organization. But when the organization says move, we move, because we feel like it's guided us in the right way. We've been so safe. I mean, think about it. So many restarted their in-person ministry, in-person meetings in July of 2020. They said, we're out of it, right? There was not even a vaccine yet. And yes, the numbers were almost nothing during that summer. But imagine Delta devastated this world, devastated this country. And then, of course, we got through Delta, and it was a quiet summer and late summer and fall. And many then said, restart it again, right? We didn't. We held off. And look at Omicron. Omicron was devastating in a different way, not as lethal, obviously, because it wasn't as lethal a variant. And also we had more vaccinations and presumably more immunity among people. But it went through the population like wildfire. At one point, 1 million a day, 160,000 in the hospital at any given time. That's crazy amounts. That blew every statistic out of the water from the Delta variant. And so imagine if we had started in November. Imagine how many people would have died or been sick. And so we're very confident that when the organization says go with the in-person ministry, we will listen. But until then, we'll hold back.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Robert. And one other thing I wanted to touch on, regional convention for this year. Is it going to be in person or is it going to be virtual?
Well, I really can't answer that question. I'll tell you why. The answer is it's going to be virtual.
Okay.
But how does that coincide with our in-person gatherings? I don't know. But yes, the organization has prepared another virtual convention. And that virtual convention will be available over 6 weeks. That's what it was last year and the year before. So we presume it will be over 6 weeks during July and August of this year, this summer. And it will be released in increments, again, in excess of 500 languages. And it will all be accessible through jw.org and also downloadable on the app. You know what's amazing? It's amazing to be able to go into your app and just tap a download button and download a half day of a convention right on your app and be able to listen to it on your iPad and watch it on your iPhone or whatever device you have. So it is pretty amazing, and we have prepared that. What the future holds, I can't speak to. I mean, does that mean we can see it together? Will we gather in groups? I don't know. We'll have further direction on that, no doubt, coming up probably relatively soon.
Well, you know what that means, Robert. When that direction comes out, you have to come back. We got to talk about it.
Sounds good.
That's what we have to do. Robert, before I let you go and wrap this up, anything else out there you'd like to let the viewers or the listeners know? Anything else you'd like to share with them?
Well, just that we're, as an organization, we're growing for a reason. People are coming back for a reason because it's home for them, and it feels like home. It's a brotherhood and a community second to none, in my view. Of course, I'm biased, but I've experienced it all of my life, and it's a beautiful place to be able to worship, to be able to understand what God wants us to do, and to be able to understand why we're going through the pain that we're going through. So I just encourage all of those who are listening and who are watching that to go to jw.org. It's a free resource. It's in your language. You can completely do that anonymously at no charge, and be able to even go through a self-paced Bible study, just yourself, nobody else. Or you can choose to contact us through the website and get assistance or a call. All of it's free. We're all volunteers, myself included, and we enjoy more than anything else sharing the things that have affected us in a positive way with others, because that's really what changes lives, and that's really what changes hearts, and we really want to do that. That's our whole that's our whole goal in life, and so we appreciate anybody who's watched this as well, because it's a lot of inside baseball, if you will, for Jehovah's Witnesses. But it's a pleasure to be able to talk about a really great organization that we're a part of.
And Robert, it's always a privilege to catch up with you and getting our latest update on the organization and how things are going. And Jackie DeShannon was the one who sung "What the World Needs Now Is Love, Sweet Love." So
there you go.
With Google, we found that out. But Robert,
okay,
thank you so much. For always making yourself available to talk with us and share with us some of the updates. And looking forward to doing it again. I know in one of our next discussions, our future discussions, I really want to talk about something that's pretty awesome that the organization did, and that's an interactive Bible study book. That's amazing. So I want to spend some time talking about that, because me being a tech guy, I love to talk about that even more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it is pretty amazing. My wife and I are studying with somebody out of the interactive program, and it's really very powerful, and it reaches the heart. It's really the if you will, the 21st century way to teach a Bible student. So love to talk about that next time.
Well, Robert, do me a favor. Stay well, my friend. I'm looking forward to our next chat.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me.
That was the United States spokesperson for Jehovah's Witnesses, Robert Hendricks. Really enjoyed catching up with Robert, giving us an update on the humanitarian efforts that is going on with those who are in Ukraine and Russia. And really appreciate him shedding some light on in-person meetings, and if ones want to attend, how they are still going to make sure that people are being kept safe. And don't forget to go to jaw.org. Some really, really good information that can keep us really grounded during this time in which we're living in. And don't forget, I'm going to welcome him back on to talk about that interactive Bible study course too. It's awesome. You guys got to definitely check it out. Maybe I'll have it on my tech show. It's kind of techy, so we'll definitely do that. Well, until next time, folks, please stay healthy, stay safe, and remember, I love you guys to life. Oh, and before I let you go, we're going to play a little video right now of the memorial that Robert talked about and the significance of it as well. Take care, folks. Stay well.
Imagine a world filled with peace, free of suffering, an abundance of food for all, and life in perfect health. But how can this beautiful future be possible? Because of what Jesus did for us. He came to earth for a purpose. He gave his life for those he loved. The night before he died, Jesus asked that we commemorate his sacrifice. He said, "Keep doing this in remembrance of me." On the anniversary of his death, people around the world will gather to remember him. Jehovah's Witnesses invite you and your family to attend the memorial of Jesus' death. At that meeting, you will find out why his sacrifice was so important and how his promises affect you. To find a location near you, please accept an invitation from one of Jehovah's Witnesses, or fill in the congregation meeting search form on jw.org.